I press record and there you are.
Walked out.
Wow. You look like you've been in Mexico
Perfect
for
timing.
2 weeks, coach.
No, I just got to Mexico like 10 minutes ago.
Wow. Well, welcome. Welcome. TA, you guys have met before, right?
I think we did in Arizona once.
Yeah, we met.
Yep. Yes, sir.
All right. Coach, I don't know if you had a chance to go through today's show, but this is decoding coach speak at the next level for the players. TA is he's a coach's kid too, just like me. So we have some perspectives. I'm really interested to hear what he has to say because he's been on the circuit. And I'm definitely interested in what you have to say, Coach. Before we get into that, though, Coach, do you have any Slammers alumni updates? Who's been balling out from the Slammers alumni in the college and pros?
I'll tell you what, I mentioned a couple guys earlier. It'd be nice if the parents connected with us and just let us know where all their kids are. It'd be great if we got some emails. But the three guys that I've actually followed pretty closely, Chase Rudin, he's had two really good outings at Santa Clara. Guys are hitting 0.79 against him right now in three relief appearances. So he's had an opportunity to get in there. He's done really well against really good competition. Obviously, you look at Hunter Holzmer. Hunter's been fantastic. 0.0 ERA right now in four outings. Short stints, but he's pitching out of the bullpen in key situations, leverage situations, and he's getting it done for him. And then Sam Harry at Sac State, he's hitting leadoff. Sometimes he goes to the three hole for Sac State as a freshman, hitting 240, five doubles, 10 RBIs early in the season, but playing every day as a freshman is pretty good accomplishment.
Yeah, bouncing back and forth between one hole and three hole as a freshman. That's definitely a good situation to be in.
Yeah. And I know there's a lot more Slammers players out there. I would really like to, give those kids the respect they deserve playing in college baseball, whether it's JUCO, Division I, Division II, Division III, doesn't matter. I wish those parents would send us an email, contact us, let us know where those kids are so that we could give them the publicity they deserve.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. Without further ado, Taylor Anderson. I don't even know how to describe you. Are you the founder of the barn? Are you head coach of national teams? Like, what is the proper introduction for you?
I would say just a baseball coach. I've been fortunate. I grew up around it, and like I said, like you said earlier, I was a coach's kid, and was fortunate to start around the game early, and I got uh, athletic background. My mom was a college athlete as well, so was my dad, and a bunch of sisters that teach and coach. So it's kind of a family business that way. But I would say I run the barn. I love player development. I've been a college coach. I coached at the Division II and the junior college level at Nebraska Kearney and McLennan in Texas. I've been fortunate to come back in Colorado, where my home state, and be around some family and be around great baseball people. But I'd say more than anything, just a baseball coach that trying to help kids.
Let's see. You were a college coach as recently as 3 years ago, correct?
No, a little bit right after COVID, kind of COVID disrupted it a little bit. I was at McLennan when COVID happened. And out of necessity, a little bit, I jumped into, I was doing some player development groups, and everything was shut down, and kind of started to come back. And I fell in love with the player development side kind of at a younger age, and was able to I was in Houston at the time, so I was able to bounce around different areas of Houston, and ended up kind of in the club side and player development side at a little bit younger ages. So mainly like 13, 14, all the way up to high school.
Okay. And is that how the barn was founded?
I actually had Anderson baseball in South Texas. And then the barn was something, my grandparents have a sheep barn in northern Colorado. And then the facility is on my grandparents' land in Eaton.
Okay.
And now it is we think it's big, but it's basically a wide tunnel, and it's a player development resource and facility up there.
Okay. And what sort of programs do you run out there? Are you open 7 days a week, or like what sort of stuff do you guys do in the barn?
Mainly small group. Obviously, Northern Colorado practices there as well. They do some indoor stuff. I've got a bunch of high school players and college guys and pro guys utilize it in the off season, but a lot of small group player development stuff.
Yeah. Layer in some stuff. Coach, have you ever seen the barn?
Have not. It sounds amazing.
It's next to a pasture, so people it's aptly named, and people come up here, and I'm gonna hop in there about right after this podcast. So there's a pasture, there's a barn, there's not much Wi-Fi, but there's a lot of players that roll through and they get after it. So
So your
Oh,
dad.
sounds like a
Go ahead, coach.
sounds like a great place to get work done. That's for sure.
absolutely.
Tag, you and I would have a lot of fun in that place.
I could spend hours in there. I know that. That's definitely what it takes. So you said UNC runs through there?
Yes, and that's just out of necessity for an indoor, and they practice there. And like I said, we've got slammers groups in there. We've got outside organization kids, and not as many pro guys that in the off season are in northern Colorado, but the ones that do circle through, and a lot of them kind of came through there, just come back in the off season a little bit.
So you keep in pretty close contact with your dad, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's
So that's
obviously.
definitely why you have this episode and you have this show, because as a coach yourself, and then somebody who is in contact with your dad who is also coaching, understanding and decoding the coach speak is definitely important. Why don't you start right there? What do you think your dad cares about when he is talking to a player? And here's the one thing that I've noticed in talking to some players is that when the talk track happens, the coach talks a lot, right? And they have the things that you can tell that they have their, not generic, but they have the things that they're saying when they're representing their program. Help the audience understand how to decode and how to understand and work with and be conversational with those sorts of situations.
I would say for the most part, my pops he's an elite communicator. He's got a light switch that comes on, and he just like every other coach, like they know how to communicate. They practice it, but he's one where like man, he wants those kids to be able to communicate with him and talk and speak with confidence and same type thing. Like tell your story. He's gonna sell his program. He's gonna sell his track record, but a lot of it's like he wants to learn about you and kind of go from there.
If you have a player, if you have one of your players that's going to meet at the barn, even say, that's going to meet a college coach like your dad for the first time, what are you telling them to make sure to do? And what are you telling them to make sure not to do?
Just eye contact to start. I think just a baseline level of respect, give a good handshake, and then be able to tell your story. It's not a lot of people kind of overeager and they want to sell themselves, but some of it's you're talking about things that are going to help you developmentally. If there's things that are going to help you in the recruiting process, just being able to communicate that and ask those questions, but also like I tell guys all the time, and not just my dad, but other coaches, like hey, be able to tell them you want to be a good player, and if you've done it, you can show that you've proved it, and then you're going to continue to work to prove it and prove it every chance you can.
Coach, tell me, when you're talking to a player in that situation for the first time, right? The discovery call, like sort of an interaction type of a deal. Tell me, what are red flags that come up to you that would be things to people to stay away from when they talk to a head coach or a college coach for the first time?
Yeah, I think, you know, you want to tell kids and to be yourself, but you also want to talk to them and say, if yourself is not confident and yourself is not wanting to be great, you might want to fake that a little bit and have a conversation about greatness and work ethic and those types of things and some confidence. And not every kid is confident, but I think, you know, eye contact, I think respectfulness, I think interest in the actual conversation itself. I think being able to respond to questions with honesty and sell their dream. But I think I call those reaching in for their soul, right? I like to kind of put my hand inside there and reach inside and see what their soul has. Like, what does the soul really have? What are you interested in? Are you interested in being a great teammate? Are you interested in being a great person? Are you interested in being a great student? Do you want to be the best possible player you could possibly be? And I think that when you get in there and you reach the soul, I think I want kids to tell that story. And if they tell that story, they're going to be perfectly fine. But if they don't understand and it's about playing time or it's about money or it's about something else or it's about the uniforms, and you know, kids, you want to wow them with, you know, here's our uniform deal, here's our glove deal, here's our bat deal, here's what we do for shoes. You want them to understand that, but you hope they could see a little bit further beyond that, and they want to get a quality education and they want to represent the university to the best of their ability. And so I think that's what I'm searching for. I don't always get it, sometimes I make a quick decision and a quick read on a kid based on his body language. So I would say body language is a must. Hold some space in the room and be able to hold your own space. You don't have to hold everybody else's space. But, when Taylor talks about his dad flips on that switch. That means he's holding his space. That means his dad is taking up whatever space he needs to take up to be the head coach at the University of Northern Colorado, or when he was the head coach, at the University of Nebraska, or when he was the assistant coach at the University of Nebraska. He held his space, and I think that's what we want the kids to do: is can you hold enough space to where I could believe that you want to be great?
The Harbaugh brothers, have you guys seen their bit? They talk about their dad when they were kids, and then they would have to shovel the snow, and then they would be all mad about it. And he was a coach too, right? And he was Jim. I think it's Jim that tells the story. He was like, "Gentlemen," he would say to them in the car. He would say to them in the car while they'd be on their way to like their grandma's to shovel snow. "Gentlemen, can we agree that we will attack this day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind?" Right? That story of the Harbaugh brothers. That was my dad's advice to me. He was like, "You got to do two things. You have to show them that you have enthusiasm, right? And you talked about the light switch coming on. Like, you have to be interesting. And the easiest way to do that, and no joke, is when my dad told me, the easiest way to do that is tell them your dream. Like, he was like, do not meet a coach for the first time, and if you want them to coach you, and if you want to have that relationship with them, don't wait too long to tell them what your dreams are. You talked about holding space in the room. Have it be self-evident to the people that are observing you that you have enthusiasm in your body. I think that's very important. Your demeanor and your posture when you're trying to make an impression on an adult.
Can I tell a quick story here for the audience?
Yeah.
So I've recruited thousands of baseball players, and they come into my office, and I have the culture, and I go through the whole recruiting part of it. I take them around the office. I show them all the great players. I show them the Tagg home run, slugging percentage, NCAA #1, and the whole thing. Pictures of Tagg, pictures of all the other first round picks. And I go through the whole thing. And there's two chairs that they sit in. And if mom and dad come, we add a third chair. If there's brother or sister, we add a fourth chair. So I got a kid that comes in with his father. His name is Luke Keishel. Luke's a big leaguer right now with the Minnesota Twins. It's the only time in my entire career. The Keishels walked in, and I said, "You guys go ahead and have a seat." And they said, "No, thanks. We'd like to stand." And they stood for an hour and a half next to me in the office while I went around my recruiting spiel. And you want to talk about two people taking up space and bringing energy? And I finished and I said, that's the first time in my entire life anyone has stood up in my office for an hour and a half and listened to me talk. And every time I went to a picture, they followed me to the picture. And they got closer to me, and their eyes opened up, and they absorbed every word I had to say. I walked out of that meeting and I said, that is a special kid. That is a special father. That is a special player. Fast forward 3 years later, the kid's in the big leagues, and he's going to be there for a long time. But I have never seen someone take up space, and they weren't trying to be anything but themselves. They said, no, we sat long enough today. We want to stand. Mm-hmm. Father and son for an hour and a half. Wow. Amazing.
That's a great story. That is a great story. TA, I'll say, you got the savvy, the social media savvy about you. You have a way to put a lot of stuff out there without being annoying. I think, so first of all, give the audience, where do they follow you on social media?
The Barnes account is at TA450. And then there's, the Instagram account is Anderson Barn Baseball. And I'd say for the most part, like my friends and people I've coached with and the players, they know I'm actually a little bit lower profile with the social media stuff. But what I try to do is I try to put the players first and make it about them. If they're working, if they're recruitable, if they're doing something good and they're uncommitted, or shoot, the guy's a draft prospect and he's doing good things in his senior season, you just try to put the players first and kind of be proud of them. But I try to do my best and make it where it's about them and it's about the guys they're working with, the teams, and even if it's different Slammers teams or different Colorado kids as well. So.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring it up, is that you do promote your players and a lot of the players that come through. What is it about them both as an individual and then inside of their performance? What is the criteria for you doing that? Like what is the criteria for you picking that?
I'll say this, it's not random. Tend to look for guys that have consistent work habits that are really, really productive. It's not just, hey, everyone gets a tweet or everyone gets spotlighted. If you're really productive for the month of June and maybe it's you're playing in different areas and they're not seeing it, just another way for, hey, you need to see this guy play. He's really made a jump. He's worked hard the last 6 months and it's starting to take off. And same type thing, like, hey, it might be another team, it might be a younger team. They're going out and they're playing in a big tournament in Georgia, and hey, you want more people to see them. And again, that's just another way of trying to put the players first. And I think we do a good job of having a lot of different people that kind of tell the player story that way.
What is one thing that a recruit who wants to get an opportunity in college, what should they go on their social media right now and either make sure to do or make sure to don't?
I would say this, like, again, we talked about the red flags earlier. I think there's a line between telling your story, kind of being obnoxious and overselling. I think some guys sometimes oversell. I think that comes sometimes from the parents. Sometimes there's coaches that get involved in that. I think you want to tell your story, man. If you're showing success, if you're making jumps, those are things you got to be able to tell. But I'd also say from a red flag standpoint, like, hey, the coaches want to hear from the player. They want to see the player. Sometimes those parents will jump in and it's a little too much parent tweet. I think they're going to be coaching the player. You're recruiting the whole family, but I think some of that stuff, like, and I think a lot of that comes from necessity because a lot of 16, 17, 18-year-old recruitable kids, they don't want to self-promote that often. And sometimes their parents are just trying to help them. So I don't think it's from a bad place, but I do think, like, from a standpoint of looking at social media, I'd want to showcase me being a good player. I'd want to showcase production, and I'd want to showcase the right people supporting me. Sometimes I want your parents to be proud of you, and I want them, but hey, they're going to be a little bit on that biased end. And you want good people in your corner without it being more about your parents, or you want about the player first, and hopefully that'll benefit them in the recruiting process and visually what people see.
So what you're saying is that on a kid's social media that he should probably demonstrate his fans and his support system around him?
I would say just like tell your story and show your production. I think there's a good example is I was fortunate to coach a kid from Erie, Colorado. His name's Maddox Burnett, and he's committed to BYU and really good arm, 92, 94, really good position player as well. And shoot, he always kept it about his team, like whether it was high school team or his summer team or his fall team. And when he was showcasing success, hey, yeah, we're going to retweet it. And hey, Slammer's going to retweet it. I'm going to retweet it. And then, hey, PBR retweets it. And guess who's going to quote tweet it, say thank you. And so it's one of those, like, you can always, every weekend there's updates. He's got quite a few different people in his corner and seeing the success. And so he's doing it in a humble way, but he's also doing it in a way where it's putting him in a good position where it shows he's a winning player. It shows he's productive. But he's also gracious to the people that are taking notice of it.
So I'm hearing team, family, and performance. Thematically, how to represent yourself in your feed is to have a pretty in-depth representation of those three things.
Yeah, and I just keeping it authentic. And I'd say keep it authentic. Shoot, we're in a barn. I like showcasing kids. It's snowing. It's cold. This winter wasn't that cold in Colorado, but years past, it's the middle of December and they're working. And I like showing that, hey, they're going to make jumps, and in the spring and the summer they make another jump. And again, it's obviously I like being able to tell the player story. I think they enjoy that sometimes, but I also know, like, man, some of them want to work in silence, and some of them aren't the ones they're not going to tweet every time they hit. So there's a mix of balance of how much you do it. You don't have to tweet every time you go and work, but I do think you can share your success a little bit in a humble way, and I think people will notice that.
Coach, bit of a gear shift here, but a high school kid with a forearm tat. Your thoughts. Are you thinking that his ceiling is then higher or is it lower? Give me your general, give me some feedback on tattoos, visible tattoos on high school players.
Yeah, I think obviously you got to get to know the kid, right? Is that a loss of a family member? Is that, what is that? What is the story behind the tattoo? Because everyone that gets a tattoo, there's a story behind the tattoo, and you got to know the story.
And if you know the story, then you get to know the kid. I would say my younger self, visible tattoo, I'm out. I would say myself now, knowing the world, not a big deal. Not a big deal. But I think too, you can judge a book by its cover sometimes. Maybe the ceiling is a little bit higher with the tattoo. Maybe you're committed to something. Maybe you're committed to greatness. Maybe you're committed to your family. Maybe you're committed to yourself. Maybe you've gone through some adversity. Because I think, not to switch gears in this, but that's why people are going into the transfer portal, because they want guys that have failed and guys that have been through something, guys that understand. You get a high school kid, no tattoos, never been away from home. He's going to have some adversity and you're going to have to figure that out with him. So there's going to be some growing pains. So I would say, I used to always judge, by the hair, the earrings, all the other stuff. And I still think, you got to be respectful, but there's a lot of good people out in the world got tattoos everywhere, right? Like Scott Cousins, sleeve tattoo on his arm, another sleeve on the other arm. And every time I see him, he say, "Hey, coach, I love you." And sometimes he'll say it in public and there'll be 30 or 40 scouts standing there and he'll be like, "Hey, coach, I love you." And the guys will just like, they'll stop in their tracks, right? Like, what? Like that's not how they envisioned that relationship, right? So I've changed a lot based on experience. But to answer the question, higher ceiling for me, higher ceiling. And you can probably tell the story of a lot of your teammates. I mean, one of the greatest players you played with at one point in time or against, right? Completely tatted out, Josh Hamilton, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's why I brought it up is that if you just got to own it. It's who you are. It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with the tattoo. It's who you are. Do you have something that's a little grab ass, like this, like a joke? Or is it funny? Is it serious? Is it commemorating something? And it ultimately matters just how you represent it and how you own it. So, all right. Segment 2, decoding coach speak. This is probably a segment that the audience will find most valuable. TA, you've talked about being able to translate what a coach says versus what they really mean. We're going to ask you to walk through some common recruiting phrases and decode them. Nino, will you validate them from the coach's side?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
All right. Most common coach speak phrases and what they actually mean. Coach speak phrase number 1. I'm looking for a good student.
You want me to go or Taylor?
Well, I'll kick it off. Do you know what I think a coach is saying? Is that you better be coachable. That's what I think that means, is that I am making a direct correlation between what your grades are and how well you can absorb coaching information.
Yeah, let me validate just from my standpoint. Like a good student, I want a good learner. I want somebody that could max out whatever their capability is. So you might be a 2.8 student, but you work extremely hard to be a 2.8 student. Like you get after it. You might be a 4.0 student, but it might come easy to you. And I don't know if I can't judge it based on the GPA or the batting average. I can't judge you based on that, but if you put together quality at bats and you battle in 2 strike counts, you might be a 2.5 student. You might have to get C pluses and Bs in your classes, but you take notes diligently and you go back to your room and you polish everything up, and you're a fantastic learner. You're a you ask questions. So yes, I validate that completely, because when I want to talk hitting to you, if you don't ask me questions, you're not a good student. You're just taking the information, and I don't know if you like it, don't like it, but I need to know. I need to know what you like and what you don't like, and I need to know what feels good and doesn't feel good. I need an active learner in the process.
TA, what about when a coach says, I'm looking for a player who plays hard? What does that mean, play hard?
I would say, just for the standpoint of, I mean, they want to see motor. They want to see your work ethic stand out, and they want to see you impact the game. Playing hard's it's a consistency thing. Like, you show up and, hey, there's one day you play hard, you're 4 for 4. It's easy to play good when you're play hard when you're 4 for 4. But the day where you're 1 for 3, can you still impact the game and show up and create value even when it's not a 4 for 4 day? And then just one thing to touch on the academic part, and that's just a little, not to go too long, but some of it's just a qualifier with their school. Like, they ask that question, it's like, hey, the Ivy Leagues are looking for a different GPA. Some of it's financial and scholarship and all that. So those are questions hey, if they're a 2.5 GPA, there's some academic schools that it's going to limit the looks they give on that kid, right?
Yeah, Coach, you gave some great stat breakdowns on the premise of grades and how it limits your opportunities the worse that they get in the first episode. Coach, tell me, can you explain to the audience the difference between a player that plays hard and a player that plays fast?
Yeah. Yeah, big difference. Someone that plays fast is under control and they understand they could get to velocity in a game. They can make adjustments and get to a breaking ball. They play fast. They can get to the next pitch. If you can't get to the next pitch, you don't play hard and you don't play fast. I had a saying in my office, 11 seconds, because in between pitches, it was 11 seconds. Well, I had a conversation with my son last week and he said, Dad, the Minnesota Twins, they talk about 17 seconds. They've done a study in Major League Baseball that the next pitch happens within 17 seconds. He said, so what you were talking about was right, but they've taken it from 11 seconds to 17 seconds. And can you be present in the next 17 seconds? And if you can be present in the next 17 seconds in a game, you play hard and you play fast. But if you strike out and it takes you a minute or 2 minutes to get past that strikeout, you don't play hard and you don't play fast. You play angry, right? And I'd rather see you play hard and play fast than play angry. So can you get to the next pitch? Can you give me 100% during that pitch? And I think if you can do those things, you play hard and you play fast. But I think not to go too far into the point, just giving effort doesn't mean you play hard. You have to give the right amount of effort. You have to understand what the game's asking you to do. Because if you just run into the wall and try to break the wall with your helmet, probably not going to work. Probably not going to work. Like, you need to understand how to play the game under control. So when you're rounding first base, you're not at 150% rounding first base. You're at about 60%. You're going to move up to about 80%. And that's where your reads are going to be getting to second base. But if you're a guy that's at 120%, I can't help you. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to get picked off. You're going to get doubled off. You're going to try to take a base that you shouldn't take. But if you play fast, you could be the slowest runner on the field. You could see a ball in the dirt at first base and take your read and get to second base. Ryan Lipken was a 5-flat runner to first base. He couldn't run out of sight in 3 days, but he was the best dirt ball guy at first base that I've ever seen. Like, he'd be standing on second base and you'd be like, that guy can't run a lick. And then you have a guy that's a 4-1 runner to first base and he can't take that 90-foot chunk because he doesn't play fast. He doesn't anticipate.
Yeah. My work with Harvey Dorfman, the author of The Mental Game of Baseball, Coach, you know that I had a decade of a personal performance relationship with him. That was that term, right effort. That was his definition of like a great player. Or like that was the goal, was to always have the right amount of effort, because baseball throttles you up. It throttles you up way too much that you have to understand how to have the right effort. TA, tell me, how can a family tell the difference between genuine recruiting interest from a coach and polite brush-offs?
I would say for the most part, like they'll communicate if they are genuinely interested, if they're going to be at the game, if they're going to communicate consistently. If you're the one initiating a lot of the conversation and the communication, I think a lot of times, like, it's a two-way street. I think there's a lot of players and families that they seek out something. They seek out schools, and there's got to be a mutual interest. Like, I tell players all the time, like, you want those schools to want you. That's something I learned in the recruiting end, is you run around and watch games and you go look at players and you're deciding between a bunch of them and you want to find the guys that you want to coach. You're trying to go win with them. And a lot of times I think the parents and the kids, sometimes they go from it as they want what they want, and it's got to be a mutual thing. So if those schools aren't showing up for you, they're not communicating with you, that's something where it's like, hey, keep proving it. Someone's going to take notice. But I would say that it's got to be mutual interest. Like, you want that coach to want your kid just as much as you might want to go to that school. Because then what happens is that coach coaches you different on the backside of it too.
Yeah, for sure. Coach, tell me, if a kid gets brushed off, if he feels brushed off or doesn't know that there's genuine interest, does that mean that they should stop communication? How does a player know if they don't have like absolute concrete signals? If they don't know that, then what should be their guiding light? How should they communicate even if they feel like they're getting brushed off?
I think they should ask the question, what kind of interest do you have in me? Am I still part of your recruiting process, or should I move on? Because for me, if I'm not interested in a kid and he asks me that question, it's a wonderful opportunity for me to be like, you know what? I think you're a good player, but you don't fit this system and you should move on. But also, if he asks that question and I'm interested, I want an opportunity to be like, well, heck no, we're very interested and we're going to continue to recruit you. But I think there has to be good communication in that process. I mean, one of my former players, Cherry Creek superstar Donzel McDonald, his statement to me was, "Get in where you fit in," right? And I put it up on my wall one day because he said, "Coach, get in where you fit in. You have to figure out where you fit, and you got to get in where you fit in."
I'm going to make a point here, and and part of it is what I do. So I find things of this world interesting. But you say, all right, well, just ask if they're interested. And I'm going to make a point in that if you just change some small little things about how you represent yourself, that it can affect the energy in the situation. So you could ask them, do you have interest in me? Are you interested? Or you could also ask them, what would it take for me to do for you to become interested in me? Now that conversation isn't assuming, it isn't drawing a hard line. It actually continues the conversation to say, even if I'm not right now, what I really care about is having the best information for my development. And I think that that's a way that you get it. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, you can also say, and I'll let Taylor speak on this, but you can also say, hey, I'm still very interested in you. Are you interested in me? Like, I want to come to school there, but I want to know if this is going to be a good fit for me. Is this going to work out? And if not, please tell me what I need to do to be that type of player. And now it becomes magical. Taylor, what do you think about that?
And I think obviously like narrowing communication, and just like you said, I love you how you directed them to be direct with the coach. And I'd say this, like, you do have to understand how spread out the coaches are. They're trying to run rosters and transfer portal and see games and to answer every question. So some of that stuff, like if they're not expressing and initiating some communication, their likelihood you're going to get like player development direction from them is probably slim. I'll say this: if you go to a camp and you take time to go visit their campus, that's a probably good chance you're going to get a directive and developmental questions like that. But via communication, via Twitter, via email, those are hard things to guide them, especially if they don't know the player. And a lot of the volume they get a lot of emails, they get a lot of direct messages. So I think just like what Nino said, is being direct. If there's something where there's initial interest and you need to find out if they're still in there or not, or there's some other schools, are you still interested? Here's the next tournament I'm playing. Those are some questions that, and you know what? If you get one or two no's on that, just keep playing, and there's going to be another one or two schools that pop up, and keep improving. But sometimes people seek out that communication from schools, and there's not that two-way interest, and you don't want to keep pushing that. And I think just that's some of that's just the coaches are so spread out with what they're trying to do.
Tag, can I touch on one more thing there? So you think about the chain of communication. So you're talking to the recruiting coordinator, you're talking to the assistant coach, you're talking to the director of operations, and then one day the phone rings and it's the head coach. There's genuine interest.
Mhm.
You know, you're playing a game and the area scout is there to see you, and that's great. And he comes to see you again, and now the cross checker's there. And then pretty soon the director of scouting shows up at your game. You're like, hey, I think these guys are kind of interested in me. But if no one shows up at your game and you kind of understand that community, hey, we'd like you to come to a camp. Hey, we'd like you to, we'll send you information about the school. When that communication starts and there's no more questions you have to ask, because I know on my recruiting list, I probably had 7 calls a week, and those 7 calls were, that's genuine interest. The other coaches, they had all the guys they were recruiting, but I had 7 calls a week, and when I made those calls, that was a make or break elevator moment for them.
That's a great call out that a coach probably has 1 call a day that he makes, right? I feel
Right.
like probably pretty average. TA, last question of the segment. What role does a high school or club coach play in helping families interpret and send signals? What is reasonable?
I would say it's an advocate. It's someone who's got a little bit of a little more background than what they're seeing on a normal weekend. Coaches might see him for a weekend and then shoot, the kid might really perform, or shoot, he might not. And from our standpoint, we see him every day. We're invested in them, and you can be in their corner and be like, man, this kid can really play. Like, you need to come see him again. But I'd say from the standpoint of just presenting it to the parents, it's a little cloudy with the club stuff. I think there's sometimes that there's some interest to over promote. I would say I want to help the coaches and I want to help the players, have them in a winning situation. Players that play for me, I want to send them to coaches that they help them win. Those players help that coach win. A lot of times, if you oversell, if you try to make it a bigger thing, you're trying to do that, what ends up happening is you get burned on the backside because you're overselling a kid, and then the kid's not ready to go. And then just being honest with the parents and understanding, okay, the parents might want a big school, and you're saying, hey, you need at bats. You need to cut that honesty and tell them where they need to get better, and then hopefully provide the tools and the on-field opportunities to do that.
So you spent the last 2 or 3 summers as a club coach out on the circuit with guys who are getting recruited. Can you help explain what is a typical interaction with the college coach with you like? And the reason why I say this is like, I think the context for a parent to understand that you're out on the road, you're playing at East Cobb, you're at that facility, and then a typical conversation, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of conversations where if a coach has an interest in one of your players, they're just going to grab you like on the way out of the stadium and just have a quick conversation with you, or come to you before the game, right? And stand you on the fence and just have like a 2 or 3 minute quick interaction and asking some very poignant questions about a player. Is that how it works, or how does it work?
A little bit. They're just looking for more background information. Like, they'll come up and ask 2 or 3 of your favorite guys, or maybe they're looking at the position player they need. Maybe they need a catcher. Maybe they're looking for, a lot of times they're trying to narrow down arms. And I tell this a lot, like they come to see arms. You see a few arms, and then the hitters, every time the coaches come to see arms throw, you have hitters that have opportunities to prove it. And I say that just because, like, the traditional Colorado kid, you go out of state, Slammers provide a ton of opportunities for them to play in front of people, but you don't have that many opportunities to do it. So your coach is the games you're not playing in front of them, they see you. The work you put in the winter, they see you. They're that kind of bridge where it's not just the 1 or 2 outings they see you. It's a little bit more, and the good thing is, shoot, I've coached college players, I've coached professional players, I've coached big leaguers. So the coaches that are asking, they're looking for some good information, and we know what it looks like. So they're trying to find that and bridge that gap and kind of fill in the gaps until the kids can play.
Hey Taylor, don't you think too though, you get that opportunity, and the more honest you are and the more realistic you are and the more spot on you are, those coaches come back to you.
100%.
If you oversell in that situation,
Yeah,
that makes it difficult.
and I think there's sometimes you get put in the middle a little bit, because there's parents that sometimes, man, the parents that I appreciate are the ones that, man, they take honest. They take, man, I'd love for you to go to junior college. I think D2, I think an academic fit, all those things. If they go and they're pushing a bigger school to you, and then you're in a position they expect you to oversell. I think that's where you get a little bit of the disconnect. And I want to put the players first. And again, you have a better name, you have a little bit more credibility. They understand, like, man, hey, we coached a kid for 4 years and he showed up and he's a really good player for us. And then the next team that comes through, they go, man, hey, there's a good shortstop. We had 3 good shortstops from him. Let's see if TA's got a shortstop. And you kind of got to prove that with the fit you help the players get into.
Yeah, I went to Colorado Springs, and Billy Martin, obviously Slammers owner, he was coaching a team his son was playing, and there was a kid by the name of Harris Williams that was playing on the team, left-handed hitter, strong legs, inside the ball, just looked like a player, right? And I went to see him play at the Sky Sox Stadium, and he had his heart set on going to the West Coast Conference and playing. And his parents, he had the idea that was perfect for him. Good education, West Coast, they were aligned. I showed up there, I'm watching him, and I have a conversation with his mom and his father that same day. First, I talked to his dad, and they are just completely aligned with what I'm talking about. You know, we want a good education. We want them to work hard. We want them to be part of something. 10 feet over, I talked to mom. Mom's completely aligned with the dream and what they want for Harris. Harris is completely aligned. It's a slam dunk for me. It doesn't always happen like that. Sometimes the parents are a little too overbearing. They say things that, you know, don't align with the player or what the family wants, but these people were on the exact same page, and it was a slam dunk for me that day. And I wish it would be like that for most kids. I wish the parents and the kids would communicate and they would be aligned as to what they want. And when they get that opportunity to speak to the coach, they put the kid first, because you've said it 4 or 5 times today, Taylor. The kid comes first. The kid comes first. When I talked to both Harris the third, Harris the second, and I talked to Eliza, they were completely aligned on what was best for Harris. And he came first, and it was completely evident. And I got to give him all the credit in the world, right? Because those are magical moments for people. And I wish the people listening on this podcast could understand we got to have that communication, and we all got to be aligned if we're going to make this thing work.
Yeah, there needs to be a sense of grounding that comes from, you know, the family or the support system around. I think that is one of the things that coaches, right? Your spidey senses as a coach in terms of understanding a player who's going to come and be able to do it, adapt to change and deal with adversity and whatnot. All right, next segment. So I'm calling this one the mental toughness gap. I'm going to overstate it. I'm going to speak a little hyperbole. I'm going to be the old guy for a second, just to put us in one end of the spectrum and to get some good opinions out of it.
What does that make me if you're the old guy?
Yeah, right. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll keep that in perspective.
But I'm gonna call today's player mentally soft, okay? But that isn't to say this generation's mentally soft. It's because I know how they communicate. And there's no way that any teenager that's pondering entering the recruiting, college sport recruiting realm, that could possibly think they're getting enough attention from anybody. Because the way that kids nowadays identify with attention, the currency of which they experience attention is obviously very digital, right? And it's not very personal, and it's certainly not with mostly adults. So there's a lot of signaling that is not going to be there, that I think creates a quote unquote mentally soft player. So I want us to agree on that label, but I'm overstating it a bit just because of the lack of attention. But what's very important for a player is that they never present themselves as mentally soft, right? So I'm going to ask you to kick it off, TA, and tell me, what is an indicator, or what should a player avoid, a family, to Coach's story, what should a player and a family avoid to represent themselves as mentally soft?
And just for the sake of it, I think there's really tough kids that love to play out there. So it's like, I just think they're different than 20 years ago. They're different than 10 years ago. The social media impacts that absolutely. But I know there's winning players. And I know there's tough players out there, and they're still coming, and they just looks a little bit different coming up the way through. So I would say, from a indicator, red flag, man, transfer of blame. Like, if you're running from, it's the coach, it's the where I'm hitting in the lineup, it's the we didn't, those things, big red flags. The jumping around different organizations, like I said, transfer of blame's a big one. I want guys that'll own it, guys that'll battle through it, and then you get a little bit different representation. Another one, just to touch on it, is like, man, those parents, like, you're getting evaluated too at games. So the water break to the dugout, to like little bit of coaching when he's 17, that shows you there's not ownership yet. Like, that shows there's hey, here's a coaching tip online. Man, there's only one kid that's stepping in the box. There's only that dad's not stepping in the box. Like, so they've got to have the tools to do it. They've got to learn on their own. They've got to learn to fail. They got to learn to succeed. That ownership part's a huge deal. But I see that when the parents don't allow that, the coaches know that they're going to have to coach that when they get to school.
Yep.
And go ahead.
Yeah. General rule of thumb as a parent of any high schooler: do not yell technical advice. Hey, keep your elbow up. Swing. Don't do that. Do not do that, because first of all, it does nothing for your player, and it immediately activates one of the red flags you're talking about.
And just just to add to that too, is like teach your kids to play the game and not look at you. And that's a younger thing.
Yeah.
Appreciate that they're their players. Appreciate that they make it all happen. Love them. Give them a hug after. Appreciate them coming. But in the middle of an at bat, you need to look at them. At the middle of at the bat, you need to look at third base and look at your coach and say help. Or hey man, you're in the box. You got to have that ownership and you got to be able to prove it. But I say that parents, I understand. Like you want your kid to succeed. It's hard to watch them fail, but the best thing they can do in that moment is it's about them, and you watch and you spectate. You're not involved in it as much as presented sometimes.
You inspire a great story of mine. So one of the best coaches I ever had, he was actually with Slammers for a little bit, but Frank Kremlis. I played for him in 2008, and he was hands down the best third base coach ever. I'm just it's not even close. He just completely transcended what you even thought a third base coach was capable of. Signals wise, all of it. I won't get into that. But he said something I'll never forget. And I'm going to ask both of you guys this to answer it for me. What is the number one responsibility of the third base coach? These are his words. So like this is a transformative, a contrarian type of guy who bucks the system. He was the first guy to do the shift an entire year. He won 110 games or something like that in the minor leagues, and he had the shift where the right-handed hitter, the second baseman, played behind the second base, and the left-handed hitter, the shortstop, moved over. He did that for an entire season. So like that dude, what do you think he said was the number one responsibility of the third base coach?
Go ahead, Taylor.
I'm going to guess what he said first. I'm going to say he said that to not be noticed where the game just happens and you're not. But I would say like the best coaches I've been around, they have a whole different level of engagement. Like they don't miss pitches. Like they're mentally engaged the whole time. But I'm interested to hear what Frank said on it.
What do you got, Coach? What do you think is the most important thing?
Confidence, body language.
Yeah, the way he phrased it, you guys are both on. You're close. He said the number one responsibility of the third base coach is to eliminate swing thought. He's like, if I do anything that adds to the swing thought of the player, and it doesn't matter what sign I give, it doesn't matter my strategy. Like, so that was his demeanor. And so everything was, it was great. And you could
Really
see it.
neutral.
Yeah, because everything, the whole sequence was about getting the player, getting the batter to just let him be a batter. So if something was going on, first of all, there was a lot of covert stuff that he was like, hey man, don't even pay attention to me. If I want him to run, I'll do something that's like covert. But even when he did, it was in a way that it was just like, hey, I'm going to get this out of the way so you can do your thing. Even if it's bunting, you know what I mean? And it was just, that was phenomenal.
Freed you up to play a little bit.
Exactly.
Hey, Tagg, can I touch on the toughness part?
My next question for you, I thought of the story, but my question for you, and you can tell that story too, but was how does a player in a family, how do they become mentally tough? How do they represent themselves as mentally tough?
Well, let me tell a quick story about my son. He's 8 years old. He's playing for the Junior Don program. And we're at UC Davis, and I'm in the stands watching the game. Usually I go down the right field line and I stay away, but this time I'm sitting in the stands with my wife because I probably hadn't seen him play in a year and a half. Who knows how long it's been. He's playing in the tournament. First pitch, guy hits him square in the helmet with the fastball. I scream out of the stands, "Get up, run to first base." And the place goes completely silent. And everybody turns around and says, they're looking at me like, what is wrong with you? I sit there and I absorb it in. He gets up, he runs to first base. After the game, my wife is like, "Why would you do that?" I was like, that was the moment I was needed most in his career. He needed to be away from fear and he needed to understand how to be tough enough. And at that, Ryan Lipkin says it best. He says, "Coach, no one is ever going to be tough enough for you, and no one ever is going to play hard enough for you." He said, "You just have to come to grips with that." And I think, how are you going to teach the family to do that? Well, I think a lot of times too, I come home and I complain to my dad about the coach, right? Coach doesn't think I'm doing this. Coach doesn't think I'm playing hard enough. He doesn't think, and my dad would always take the coach's side. He would say, well, if coach doesn't think you're playing hard enough, then you're not. If coach doesn't think you're tough enough, then you're not. In today's world, As soon as the student athlete comes home and says to mom or dad, hey, coach thinks this, I'm not sure those are the conversations that are happening at the house. I think those conversations are, oh, you're great, son. Don't worry about what coach says. As soon as that happens, we're losing sight of toughness and we're losing sight of coachability. We need to understand that if we're going to do this together, we got to be on the same page. And when someone has constructive criticism, we all have to understand how to deal with it. I read a quote today on the way here, and it said, kids need to sit the bench once in a while. Kids need to hit ninth once in a while. Kids need to fail. And it's okay for them to fail. They need to face adversity. And we as parents, and Taylor, are you a parent yet? Soon you will be. You will be, right? We as parents, we need to understand how to let them fail and face adversity, because when they do that, then they're in a position to succeed, right? And I think when you listen to Tagg talk, and I'm sure Taylor, when you talk, most of your things, when you fail, that's when you learned your best lessons.
Yep. Yep. Great point. Okay, last segment here. So, are you guys aware of how the NCAA rules roster limits are changing over the course of the next year? They're
Yes.
going from 40 to 35, right? Am I right on
Yes.
that?
Yes, you are.
Okay. All right. So, if I'm a high school kid, I believe the numbers are this. I think last year, or the 2026 commits, this is 26. There's 6,000 or something like that. In the 2027 class, there's like only about 1,000, right? That's what I wanted to help me understand what's going to happen if they're taking away 5 roster spots from all of the Division I teams, and then also with the portal and whatnot. Like, how does that affect the marketplace for a high school player who wants to play in college?
I'll say this. I coached the 2026 team recently in Colorado. They went through, in the beginning of their high school career, the recruiting window was earlier. The roster limit changed. NIL was a part of it. There was a lot of different changes through their class. And I saw it from I remember recruiting and 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and seeing it going, guys are getting contacted as 15, 16-year-olds, and there's a lot of early attention. And something I would tell parents and kids is that it's changed a ton, not just the roster limit, the contact rules, the roster limit, but it's as competitive to get to college baseball and to play in college baseball as I've seen it. I thought the 2026s they just had a moving target a little bit. And I'd say, just to clarify it, it's competitive. That roster limit moving down just means there's more players available that are out in the recruiting portal, the portal, the high school. It's just a different timeline than what it was 5-10 years ago. And in order to play and be one of those 34 guys, you have to be a really, really talented player and be productive.
Yeah, I think same thing. I think, control the controllables. That's easy to say. Control what you can control. You can only control getting better. You can only control continued development. And if you stop developing, whether you're at a college and you stop developing, or you're trying to get to a college and you stop developing, you're going to have to pay the price there, right? And so it's all about development. If you don't develop while you're at the university and that roster limit shrinks from 40 to 35, who are the 5 guys that are going to go? The 5 guys that are going to go are the guys that are late for weights, have a bad attitude, don't work hard, aren't tough enough, don't play well enough, don't have the team's best interest there, aren't a good student, get in trouble off the field. Those are the guys that are leaving, right? Who are the guys that are going to show up in their place? The guys that can help the team win and be successful and can graduate from college. So if you're going to control the controllables, control what you do as a player. Control getting stronger, control getting faster, control playing tougher, control you have limited opportunities now. Like before, there were many opportunities because they could carry more players and things were a little different, and high school kids were more relevant in the recruiting process. It's a fact of life now. You're not as relevant as a high school player. So what can you control? Don't worry about that. Worry about what you control. I can get in that weight room and get stronger. I could get faster, and I could still show up and be relevant, because me as a college coach, I'm not going to stop recruiting high school players, but I'm only going to recruit high school players that can impact the program. I'm not going to take many opportunities to take a guy and say, "Oh, I'm going to develop that guy," because that development phase, you don't have enough time, right? So what I'm saying to the high school player is, you're in charge of the development. You better take care of that if you want to show up here and be successful.
Speaking of development, TA, why don't right-handed power hitters from Colorado typically go deep?
I would say this just from just the same thing we're talking about is you got to be productive. And there's Texas, there's California, there's Florida, there's all these different places that they see production at a different level. And Colorado, here's a good thing: there's a ton of late bloomers. There's a ton of really good athletes. They need at bats to do it. I think sometimes you get caught in that 34, that D1 or bust. And if you go to a big D1 and you're not getting at bats, sometimes you don't get that steady climb. So that's part of why we got to choose the right fit. But I say developmentally, like, there's good players in the state. There's talented players. They've got to put themselves in a position where they can keep making those jumps. But I would say if you're going to pick out of just a random top 10 states to go get players from, you're going to start with the warm weather ones. You're going to start there. And then what I'd say is, like, hey, there's kids that stand out and separate themselves regardless of where you're at. It can be a cold weather kid. There's tons of good cold weather kids anyway. But Colorado kids specifically, you don't see as many colleges during high school season in Colorado. There's just, they're coaching. They're not around it as much. You're not seeing as many big arms all the time. There's big arms out there, but it's not Houston. It's not Southern California. The good thing is, I think Colorado players get some edge from that. The top end gets some edge, and they kind of want to prove it a little bit differently.
Yeah. I had a parent ask me that question. That's how I got into the fold. And my first thought was, when I really thought about it, I was like, well, you go out of state and chase too many breaking balls, because the depth of the breaking ball is absolutely real. I want to leave the listeners with this, because I know that the junior college route, it's really hard, actually. You'd have to be a really big baseball nerd to know how many really good junior college programs are out there. So given like the decrease in supply and demand that is going on in the typical college sense, there is going to be exponential growth, I think, in the aspiring baseball player who wants to play. There's going to be a lot of good students that typically wouldn't have gone to junior college that are going to end up on that track. And so I wanted to ask the both of you guys, I bet you guys give me 5 programs that come to mind that you know are great programs that there's a 99% chance that our listeners have never heard of.
Go ahead, Taylor.
Well, I was fortunate to coach at McLennan in Texas, in Waco, and Nino mentioned Billy Martin, and I was fortunate to coach his son there, and he's a Colorado kid that went the junior college route, and he's currently in the Yankees organization, and he ended up having an awesome college career. But I say that about him for that reason, because he bet on himself, and they understood what junior college was. I think a lot of people just closed the door. There's some of the best players I've ever coached were at junior colleges. Big leaguers, pro guys, really, really driven kids that wanted to keep growing in the game. They weren't about just putting it in their Twitter bio for 6 months and going to that D1 school. And man, I'm going to get around the best coaches that I can go develop. But program wise, like, shoot, there's some really good ones in, I think, Cowley County. I think McLennan. I think Glenn does a good job. Shoot, there's Florida ones that are loaded. There's Walter State has Colorado kids. There's California one, San Joaquin Delta, when Reed Peters there. Now he's gone, but really tough. I was fortunate at the D2. I'd recruit a bunch of junior colleges in California, and I loved watching those guys play. Like, they got after it. High IQ, tough, wanted to win. But I've been fortunate. I experienced that level a lot, and I really appreciate the talent that shows up. And the coaches there, how much time they're able to spend with their players is a huge thing.
Yeah, definitely. Coach, do you have a list of junior colleges that people probably never heard of that are great programs?
Santa Rosa Junior College, Diablo Valley Junior College, Yavapai, probably they've heard of Yavapai, but Glendale Community College, fantastic. Cochise College, right on the border. Cochise was a powerhouse. They had fantastic players, right? But I think more importantly, Tag, you got to get in where you fit in, right? Like I say that same thing that Donzel said, right? The fit. Like you have to understand that the fit is way more important than the name. So you could say as a player, a parent, hey, I want to go to the best junior college program in the country. That might not be a good fit for you, right? You could go to Trinidad State. You could go to Lamar Junior College. You could go to Otero Junior College. Those might be the best fits for you sometimes because you're going to get an opportunity to play. And then if you get an opportunity to play, then you get a chance to go to the next level. Maybe it's Arizona, maybe it's California, maybe it's Texas. Maybe it depends on on what your baseball ability is like and where you can go and become a player. Kansas City Community College, right? Might be fantastic, right? And then you get an opportunity to go to the next level. So I think you got to figure out what's the fit more than, yeah, there are a lot of places. Iowa Western, oh my goodness. Iowa Western, what a powerhouse from a junior college standpoint, right? Pima Junior College was a powerhouse back in the day when I was coaching at that point. Paul LaDuca, right, comes from Pima Junior College, goes to Arizona State, right, and plays in the big leagues for a long time, right? So there's so many opportunities that you can find that work out best for you.
Yeah. The fit, I think that all goes back. We'll say this a lot throughout all of these episodes, but the relationship with the coach is important. And it's important to, I think, establish an attitude inside of yourself that it's definitely a two-way street, and finding your fit is going to have a lot to do with how strong of a relationship you can have with your coach. I remember I did not know the junior college thing very well. And when I went to California to college, my freshman year, I was absolutely blown away at how many good players are from junior college. I mean, it was like a third of the roster when I got to California and played the D1 schedule up and down the coast. And it's like a third of the good players that are really good Division I players and that get drafted come from junior college. And what they did is they maximized their time there. They grew, they got stronger. They created relationships with coaches, made a name for themselves, and it's crazy how fast and how fluid, particularly now, how fluid a situation can be when you grow a little bit, get out of the house, grow a little bit, get strong, and perform perform on a stage. How that can change things for people.
I think it's interesting, Tag, what you say. The coach and the school, those are the two most important factors. Academics is important, economics are important, but the programs, Sacramento City College, when Jerry Weinstein was the coach there, was the best junior college program in the world. He had big leaguers. Jerry left, right? And his assistant took over. His assistant is now a big league coach with the Cleveland Indians. But Sacramento City College is not what it was when Jerry was there. Now, maybe the new coach builds his legacy and becomes great like that. But I think you got to have both of those opportunities have to work in order for the fit to be real. And that's anywhere you go. The coach has to be committed and you have to find that. If you find that, then it's the right fit.
Yeah. And then there's also the situations too where you just get given a coach like I was given you and it worked out.
Yeah. Yeah. Magical that you were that right-handed hitter from Colorado that went D1. So it can happen.
Yeah.
You got to be able to hit though.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. TA, absolutely wonderful. Thank you for joining, my man.
Of course.
And I'm not shocked at all that you got a nice background set up. Just good, well manicured, design, thought out. Nothing to surprise me about what goes on back there.
Nino's Mexico looks pretty cool though too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, TA, tell your dad I said hi, will you?
Absolutely, will do.
He's a superstar.
All
Coach, enjoy your trip in Mexico.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, buddy. All right,
I'll
fellas.
see you next week.